My name is Mandy Mikulski. I'm the Director of Development for the AMA Foundation. This year, the Foundation hosted National Model Aviation Day, where we welcome clubs across the country to host an event on August 16th to celebrate model aviation. A separate part of National Model Aviation Day is raising money to support the Wounded Warrior Project. Since working on National Model Aviation Day the last 3 years, I've become close to the Wounded Warrior Project. I've learned a lot about the programs they support and really feel like they make a difference in the lives of our veterans when they come home. And I have had the great experience of meeting several of the Wounded Warrior Speak program workers and several veterans that are part of the program. And each one of them is so optimistic. They love what they do, and they love to share their story and also tell you about the others that have been affected. And I've had the pleasure of meeting Norbie, who's here today, and getting to know him, and he's a great guy. Just to give you a little background about Norbie, he's from Visalia, California. He served in the U.S. Army for 11 and a half years before retiring as a sergeant first class. He had deployments in Kuwait, Bosnia, and Iraq. Norbie represented the Army at the State of the Union address in 2005 and was the honored guest of Laura Bush. Norbie's awards include the Combat Action Badge, the Purple Heart, and Bronze Star. Since retiring, Norbie has helped many wounded warriors like himself transition to their new life after injury by introducing them to the Wounded Warrior Project and all it has to offer. He's here today to share his story with us, and I hope you'll help me in welcoming Mr. Norbie Lara.
Good afternoon. You know, one of my favorite quotes is from Mark Twain. And he says the two most important days in a person's life is the day that they are born and the day that they find out why. And I knew why from when I was a small little kid. My older brother Felix, who's 16 years older than me, he served in the Army as well, and he served over in Germany. And Felix, instead of writing letters home, what he would do is he would record himself telling stories. And one day my mom sat us down. I really didn't know what Felix was doing. I was a little kid, didn't really understand. One day my mom receives a package, and there's a cassette in there. She puts it in there in the recorder, and she hits play. And as I'm hearing Felix tell jokes and stories, my mom starts passing out these pictures. And then it all made sense. And one of those pictures was Felix dressed just like the Army men that I had. And I knew exactly what I was going to do. I was going to be an Army man just like Felix. In 1995, I made my dream a reality, and I joined the Army. And I can still remember how I felt when they gave me my uniform after they gave me that really cool haircut they give you. I was just so excited because I wanted to put that uniform on. So I donned the uniform and laced up my boots, and I went in front of a full-length mirror. And there in front of me, in that reflection, was a soldier. And that was the proudest moment of my life because I knew I was going to make a difference by serving my country. So after training for military police, I went off to South Korea, where I did a lot of training to be a combat military policeman. And after that training, I went over to Fort Hood, Texas, which is home of the 1st Cavalry Division. From there, I went to Kuwait in '96 when we almost went to war with Iraq again. And from '98 to '99, I did some time in Bosnia. And right about the end of that deployment, that was about the end of my enlistment. So I was only able to see my 2 children about 2 weeks every 6 months. So it was time for me to go home and be a dad. So I re-enlisted one more time for Fort Irwin, California, and that's about 3.5 hours from where I live. And the idea was I would start applying for police jobs back home and spend more time with my kids. And everything was going good. I was spending more time with my kids, applying for police jobs. I think every person in this room knows exactly where they were when they heard about the attacks on September 11th of 2001. I was on shift, and I was about to get off that morning. I think I got off work about 2 o'clock in the afternoon that day, and I went home and I saw on the television the first time the footage of the airplanes crashing into the Twin Towers, and I remember how sad I felt for the families that lost loved ones, but also how angry I felt because our country had been attacked. Well, there was no way I was going to sit on the sidelines and retire and get out while everybody else is going off to fight. So I re-enlisted again for Fort Stewart, Georgia, which is home of the 3rd Infantry Division. I got there in December of 2003, and I volunteered for the next deploying MP company. I didn't care where they were going, Iraq or Afghanistan. It was my turn. December of 2003, I volunteer, and by March of 2004, I'm boots on the ground in Iraq, in Baqaba, which is located northeast of Baghdad in the Sunni Triangle, or the Triangle of Death. Very dangerous part of Iraq. Our mission was to provide training for Iraqi police officers, and our mission, my squad's mission, was to provide security. Our forward operating base was basically a 3-story building surrounded by dwellings. During the day, our neighbors would be on the rooftops and they'd be waving at you. But as the sun would set, it became very common for the enemy to take position on those same spots that we saw our neighbors and trying to take our lives. So it was very strange to be in a war where you really don't know where the enemy is or who they are. I was only there for about 3 months, and it felt more like 3 weeks before I was injured. Our squad and I, we were tasked for a 24-hour quick reactionary force mission. The main mission was to provide security for an ambulance. There was heavy fighting going off in Biarritz a few miles up the road, and you could hear it off in the distance. I remember the radio going off. There's a severely wounded warrior on the battlefield, and we placed the ambulance in our convoy, and I'm in the lead vehicle, and we're going as fast as we can towards the battle to save our brother. Up ahead in the distance, I can see women and children start to run away from the road. And training and experience dictated, I get on the radio and I tell my gunners to get down. Seconds after I did that, 2 roadside bombs went off. One in front of my number 2 vehicle and one behind it. And I remember hearing the explosion and seeing my side view mirror and seeing all the dust and debris. And my heart stopped until the radio went off. Rough Rider 2, this is Rough Rider 2 Alpha. No one's injured, it just blew out all the tires. Charlie Mike, continue mission. In our Up Armor Humvees, we have run flat tires. We still had a brother on the battlefield. We need to go get him. As we're going towards the battle, I can see tracers going from one side of the street to the other as the enemy is engaging our soldiers, and our soldiers are trying to take back the city. As we go in, our gunners are engaging the enemy as we're waiting for the Bradley to come up with the injured soldier. It opens up the back hatch, we take that soldier and put him in the ambulance, and away we go to the hospital. Well, we drop him off and thinking it's going to be safer, we take a different route. This part of the city that we're going through is normally very heavily populated. It's a marketplace. Normally you can barely even drive through, but there was nobody around. And again, training and experience dictated, I get on the radio, tell my gunners to get down. Another roadside bomb goes off and it hits another one of my vehicles and my heart stops again. The radio goes off, Rough Rider 2, this is Rough Rider 2 Bravo, no injuries. It just blew out all the tires. Charlie Mike. We continue on to our forward operating base and my radio is going off as I'm waiting. All these missions are now waiting for me and my squad. We get to the forward operating base and it took us about 15, maybe 20 minutes to download those 2 vehicles from all their equipment and put them in fresh vehicles so we can roll out and do more missions. Just about that entire 24 hours, mission after mission after mission, until 3 a.m. We have one last mission left, and to provide a combat patrol. The patrol that went out before us, call sign Bulldog, had already been attacked by a rocket-propelled grenade, and they were going in to assess their damage. So we were up. I remember it being very quiet that night. There's a curfew in place. The only folks that are allowed are U.S. military personnel. Anyone else is the enemy, and we're to eliminate the threat. About an hour in, The last thing I remember is telling my driver, Specialist Hill, go ahead and take a right-hand turn here. As we complete that right-hand turn, immediately I see a brilliant flash of light as my ears begin to ring and the vehicle's slowing down, starting to fill with smoke. Training and experience kicks in. The vehicle's now disabled. It's now a target. We need to get out and engage the enemy. I remember trying to open the door. I'm in the right front passenger seat, and I'm trying to open, and today, I'll tell you, I felt my hand on that handle. I reach over with my left to see what's going on, why it won't open, and my hand isn't on the handle. My elbow's not there. And instead of my shoulder being there, something warm is wet, which I'm starting to make out as blood is now where my arm should be. And I immediately go into shock as I'm trying to make sense of what just happened. My door is in place. If we hit a roadside bomb, why is my arm gone? Specialist Hill, somehow he was able to get us out of the kill zone. And we get back to our forward operating base where that same ambulance we had been taking the whole day before trying to protect is now doing their best to make sure those insurgents don't succeed in taking our lives that day. And that's about the last thing I remember until I woke up at Walter Reed Army Medical Center. The nurse comes in and she says, Sergeant Lara, welcome to Walter Reed. I know a lot of things don't make sense to you, so I need to explain to you what happened. Your squad was on a combat patrol, and it was attacked by a rocket-propelled grenade and came under ambush. The rocket-propelled grenade went through the firewall of your vehicle, went through your arm, which is why it's gone. It went through your lieutenant's arm, who was sitting right behind you. It exploded behind her, which sent shrapnel to the back of your seat. And that last area is your liver. You inhaled when the rocket exploded, which severely damaged your lungs. And because you were so close to the blast, you also have a brain injury. And as she's telling me all these things, all I can think is, what day is it? And she says, it's August. You've been in a coma for 2 months. And in my mind, I'm only 31 years old. I can't move. I'm being fed oxygen through my neck. And the only thing that's going through my mind is my life is over. What am I supposed to do now? Well, thankfully, an organization was born about a year before that called Wounded Warrior Project. They came into my room and they gave me one of their signature backpacks. And in that backpack was clothing. When you're severely wounded, they cut off all your clothes and you come back to the States with nothing. So they put it on my bed and they said, thank you for your service and thank you for your sacrifice for our nation. Whatever you need from now on, all you have to do is ask. We'll come back and see you when you're better. I had no idea who Wounded Warrior Project was. I knew what the logo was. That's a fireman's carry, one of many carries you're taught to get your brother off the battlefield. All I really knew is I had a long road in front of me. So for months, I had to learn how to walk again and talk again and take care of myself until I became an outpatient. And again, Wounded Warrior Project came to me and they said, we are taking a bunch of warriors skiing. How would you like to go? I'd never tried skiing, but I said, why not? So there I am met in Snowmass, Colorado by a Vietnam veteran who had lost both his arms, recovering a mine when it exploded in his face. I can still remember what I felt like as I'm on the hilltop for the first time, about to do my very first run, and my skis are crossed. And Jerry looks down at me and he says, you ready? And I looked at him and I said, no. He said, yeah, you are, let's go. I uncrossed my skis and I started doing these S-turns like he showed me. And I started doing something I hadn't done in a very long time, which is smile. And at the bottom of that hill, I realized something very important. My life had been changed forever, but it wasn't over yet. So I came back to Wounded Warrior Project and I said, show me what else I can do. So they took me whitewater rafting, they took me rock climbing, they took me skydiving, and they introduced me to the greatest game known to man, which is golf. And I'll tell you that there is nothing like the look on someone's face when they realize they just got beat by a one-armed man. This organization, it's been 11 years since I was injured. And this organization has never let me down in the promise that they made to me many years ago. I've seen them keep their promise to me, but to every single wounded warrior that we have encountered, and allowed me to work for them so I could make that very same promise to warriors when they returned, and I could be that person carrying the warrior. See, our logo is pretty unique. It's one warrior carrying another, and for a long time, that's what I thought it meant. It's just me carrying my brother. But what I learned over time is the warrior underneath is moms and dads and husbands and wives and children. And just as importantly, it's folks like AMA. Folks who believe in heroes. You believe in those men and women that would sacrifice their life, limb, eyesight, their skin, their mind. They would literally give up everything they have because they believe in this country and they believe in freedom. And you believe in them. We have been here for 11 years, and we are now serving over 60,000 warriors and their families by providing 20 different programs that focus on their mind, body, economically empowering them, and keeping them engaged so they never feel alone. There's an array of different programs that deal with post-traumatic stress disorder, adaptive sports, sending them back to school, getting them a job, giving their families the tools they need, so they're not alone either. And the biggest program was the one that we made last year that I love because I came very close to being part of that program, and that's the Long-Term Care Trust. What we realized is that someone who's 22 years old, whose husband or mom or dad or wife has to take care of them, if they have to quit their job and take care of that warrior, then our government needs to give them a stipend. So we passed legislation for that. But on the other end, when they can no longer be cared for by that loved one, a 30-year-old has no business being in an old folks' home because he can't take care of himself. So what we said is, when they can no longer do that, Wounded Warrior Project will. They will stay in their homes and we'll take care of them. That's what they deserve. They've sacrificed so much on our behalf, and it's us as a nation to do so. And everything we do for them is absolutely free of charge. They don't pay one dime. The moment that they chose to don that uniform, that was payment enough. And we do that without any help from the government whatsoever. It's all Americans who choose to make a difference. It helped me to understand that my purpose in life was to serve my country, which I did proudly, but it was also to serve others, to serve my brothers and sisters as they return. Because the greatest way to overcome challenges and obstacles in my life was to help other people with theirs. And that's the same thing I offer Americans when I encounter them. So I invite you to please share my story with your neighbors and your friends and your family, so they don't forget and they realize that freedom isn't free, and that the greatest casualty is being forgotten. Thank you very much.